This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. Walt Nauta is screwing up again in federal court, and we just did a hot take on it right on this network just 20 minutes ago. Walt Nauta, who is the co-conspirator defendant along with Donald Trump in the Mar-a-Lago 37 indictment count felony down in Miami, who at this very moment is working for his boss, Donald Trump, as his valet, butler, body man, whatever you want to call it. Walt Nauta and his lawyers are the gang that can't shoot straight. And now they're going to be pissing off the Department of Justice and ultimately, we hope, the trial judge, Judge Cannon, as they continue to try to drag their feet and drag their ass to delay the inevitable, which is appearances in court in regular due course required in a federal court system. And they're using ridiculous excuses in their filings that the Department of Justice is easily calling out. This is low-hanging fruit in immediate responses to their attempts to delay the case. What's going on? What's going on is, as everybody that follows this network, Legal AF and the MeidasTouch network know, putting aside whether they're co-conspirators or not, we know this, that Judge Cannon several weeks ago granted a motion by the Department of Justice to do a couple of things. One, to hold a status conference. And she set a date for that status conference at that time. We reported it right here on this network. Maybe Walt Nauta and his lawyers need to watch the MeidasTouch network and Legal AF and hot takes like this one to learn anything about their case, because they seem incompetent and incapable of following the proceedings on the public docket, on the docket entries for the case. So what's going on? We have, and everybody knows it, a July 14th hearing in front of the judge to do two things. One, to hold a status conference. Two, to talk about what the trial date is going to be, right? Remember, the judge drew the line in the sand and said, okay, speedy trial requirements. I'm going to set a date for this trial in August, and I'll let the parties tell me why that's too early or too late. Department of Justice jumped in and said, well, we're a little, July's, we're not good in August, Your Honor. How about December? Let's just move it 3 months ahead, put it into December or so of 2023. That should be enough time for us to get through this relatively garden variety case of a former president committing Espionage Act violations. And the judge, Judge Cannon, said, all right, let's have a hearing. Let's have a hearing. And she announces it to the world, and it's reported in every major media outlet, including the MeidasTouch network. July 14th, I'll see you at 10 a.m. in my courtroom. She also said in her prior orders about who represents who in the case that you have to have a local counsel, meaning, to be clear, a lawyer who's not just a member of the bar somewhere, but is a member of the specific bar of the federal court in which Judge Cannon plies her trade, which is the Southern District of Florida. I'm a member of the Southern District of Florida bar. I'm a member of the New York bar. I'm a member of the Florida bar. But you have to be a member of the individual federal bars in which you're about to practice. And Stan Woodward, the lawyer for Walt Nauta, isn't. He's a D.C. lawyer. That's okay. It's okay to be a D.C. lawyer. It's okay not to be a member of the Southern District of Florida like I am. However, if you're going to practice there and represent a client there, you got to go find a local lawyer. And they finally found a local lawyer. It took them 2 missed arraignments and 3 weeks of time to find somebody in the Southern District of Florida to represent them as local counsel. And they found Sasha Dayton. Ever hear of Sasha Dayton? Neither have I. Sasha Dayton, I'm sure she's a perfectly nice person. She has a very tiny 2-person law firm in the hinterlands of Fort Pierce, Florida, at the very top of the Southern District of Florida district, where she practices not representing sophisticated clients in sophisticated federal matters like federal crimes like Espionage Act and obstruction and conspiracy and sedition. No, she makes her money, and it's fine, but she makes her money representing people who have DUIs, who have divorce problems, who've gotten arrested. She literally has ads in which she says, have you been arrested? Call for a free consultation. She had a hot mess Barbie ad. We're going to show it here in the hot take. which she said, "Are you a hot mess Barbie? Bad night? Been arrested? Call me, Sasha Dayton." Okay. Apparently Walt Nauta heard this and said, "Have you been dragged into a coup? Have you been dragged into a Espionage Act criminal conspiracy? Call me for a free consultation." But what Sasha Dayton should know, as an officer of the court, as a member of the bar of both Florida and the Southern District, and by reading the orders of the judge, is that she's got to be prepared now that she's entered her appearance. She has to be prepared to handle every aspect of that case as if she was the primary lead trial lawyer. In fact, Judge Cannon issued an order just like that when she issued the order when Chris Kise came in on behalf of Donald Trump and stood next to sat next to Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche is the regular attorney for Donald Trump on all things apparently criminal, but he needed local counsel. And they struggled, Donald Trump, as we reported here on this network, for a long time to find local counsel until they said, well, wait a minute, Chris Kise, who's representing Donald Trump and took $5 million of the Save America PAC money to do it in a retainer and in payment and representing them up in New York, you're a member of the Southern District. Why don't you stand next to Todd Blanche? And they did. But the judge said in her order, any lawyer who's local counsel has to be prepared at any given time to handle the case without looking over their shoulder and wondering where their co-counsel is. So welcome, Sasha Dayton. You can handle the hearing on the 14th because Walt Nauta's lawyer, as we said earlier in a hot take, has said, check the calendar, judge, can't make it. And I just learned about this hearing a day or so ago. Well, that pissed off the Department of Justice because A, that's a lie, and B, he's got local counsel who can handle the hearing. So this hearing on the 14th is to do two things. One, to set the trial. The judge wants all the papers and they have the issue about when the trial in this matter should be by the 10th of July, right? That's it. It's all coming in today. The opposition by Donald Trump and Walt Nauta's lawyers, signed by Sasha Dayton for Walt Nauta, is today. She wants to hear why December doesn't work for the defense. Well, we know what they're going to do. One of my colleagues at Legal AF says he thinks they're going to take a position that the thing has to happen after the primaries and after the election. I think it's going to be, the judge is going to ultimately rule that it's not going to be December of 2023, but it's going to be first quarter of 2024. We'll see. We'll see at the hearing on the 14th of July. At the same hearing, the judge is conducting a required component of when you're dealing with Espionage Act and classified documents is that you hold a CIPA, C-I-P-A hearing. Judge has to hold a CIPA hearing to deal with Confidential Information Procedures Act. How are they going to deal with the documents in the exchange and discovery? How are the witnesses going to be shown documents? Are we going to have the silent witness rule, meaning they can't refer to the documents in open public court, but the jury knows it on some sort of index which document A is, because the jury's going to have to ultimately see these documents themselves. How are you going to protect it? How are you going to balance the right to a public trial and the public's right to observe such a trial with classified national security documents? This tension between the national security and defense information and intelligence community and the Department of Justice and the right to a fair trial. All this gets decided at a hearing, and that CIPA hearing, that CIPA conference, C-I-P-A, is also the 14th of July. And how do I know that? Because I went on the docket, which anybody in the public can type in U.S. versus Trump, U.S. versus Nauta, and pull up the court docket, and you'll see all the entries. You know who says he didn't do that? The lawyer for Walt Nauta. He claims in his papers that even though he's missed 2 arraignment dates, and even though he finally got a local counsel, he didn't know till July the 5th that the judge on June the 26th had set the hearing for the 14th, and he can't make it because he's in trial. Department of Justice has just filed, moments ago, signed by Jay Bratt, the head of the Counterintelligence Division of the Department of Justice, their let's put it nicely, their opposition to the papers filed by Walt Nauta. And they called him out in a number of different ways. First of all, he said, well, Mr. Woodward, the lawyer for Walt Nauta, must have had a typo. And they said this in a footnote we'll put up on the board, because he said that we, the Department of Justice, let him, Stan Woodward, know, the lawyer for Walt Nauta, that we would be requesting a SEPA conference. And in the papers that Walt Nauta filed, he said that he let them know, the Department of Justice, that he opposed such a motion. But the Department of Justice said that must be a typo. It must be not opposed, because when we contacted him, Walt Nauta's lawyer, Woodward, didn't oppose. So it's either a typo or, Judge, he's misleading you. And so they call him out on that. Second thing they say is, how could he possibly take the position that he didn't know until July the 5th when he hired Sasha Dayton, the DUI divorce criminal lawyer up in Fort Pierce, to be his local counsel? That's when he found out, because, oh, poor guy didn't have access to the federal docket. He didn't get service through the federal docket. You know what? You, on a case where you're not yet admitted and you're the lead trial lawyer, you do what everybody does, like me. You go on and check the docket online for free, and it tells you when the hearing is. Or you watch the news or this network, because we talked about the July 14th date. So to come to court on the 10th of July and file and say that you didn't know about the June 26th setting of the date until the 5th. And by the way, even if you found out about it on the 5th, you're 9 days late anyway. So the DOJ called them out on that. DOJ also said, last we looked, Judge Cannon, you said that local counsel, as soon as they're local counsel, they're as good as regular lead trial counsel. And they literally have to be prepared to handle every aspect of the case on the day that they're there, as if they are lead trial counsel. Welcome, Sasha Dayton. I know you weren't prepared for this, but you're going to have to handle a SEPA conference dealing with classified information at the highest level of our national security, when yesterday you were trying to get some guy off for DUI or domestic assault. And that's, so they said, use Sasha Dayton. They also, the Department of Justice, objected to Walt Nauta having some sort of open-ended, indefinite continuance and postponement of the hearing, because Stan Woodward doesn't even bother to propose alternative arrangements. Like, well, if we did it after my trial at 6 o'clock, I could do it at 6 o'clock at night. I could phone in. I could Zoom in. He doesn't give any alternatives, and he gives no alternative dates. Look, I've been in trial. I've tried 35 cases in my career. There are days when you don't have trial. The judge is tied up in a morning, has to handle another proceeding. He doesn't start till noon, or she doesn't start till noon or 3 o'clock, or they end early, or they're not having trial on Thursdays or Fridays. He doesn't give the judge, Judge Cannon or the Department of Justice, any of that. It's never the case where you have straight trial every day, 9 to 6, 5 days a week. Doesn't happen. But Walt Nauta's lawyer doesn't give any alternatives. Like, how about a Saturday? I've had federal hearings on a Saturday. Why can't they do it on Saturday? Why can't he Zoom in for them? And then Walt Nauta's lawyer had the temerity to complain about the location of his indictment. Oh, I didn't want to be indicted in Miami. I wanted to be indicted in D.C. Well, I got news for you, Mr. Woodward. You're likely to get your wish, because Jack Smith's team is not done. And when they finally indict for the other counts that arose out of what happened in District of Columbia, your client could be indicted again in the District of Columbia. Right now, it's down in the Southern District of Florida. So the Department of Justice opposes completely Walt Nauta's fourth attempt in a month to delay these matters. He missed his flight and missed an arraignment. He didn't have a lawyer and missed an arraignment. It took him 3 weeks to find local counsel, Sasha Dayton, scouring the entire bar of the Southern District of Florida to find her. And then now, on the precipice of the judge wanting to decide the trial date and hold the SEPA conference just 4 days before the day that his papers are due, he suddenly, Judge, I didn't know about this hearing, even though the world knew about it on June 26th. And at even your admission, you've been sitting on this information for 9 days. And so this is going to be loser. as my colleague Ben Meiselas said in an earlier hot take, Walt Nauta is not getting another extension. They're not postponing the July 14th SEPA status conference and status conference to set the trial date. No way, no how. Not even Judge Cannon is going to do that. That's my prediction. The other thing the Department of Justice raises, just to give a black eye to Walt Nauta's lawyer, Stan Woodward, is you also complain, Mr. Woodward, that you don't have a security clearance yet. You've had over 3 weeks. You've said to the court, you're always going to be the lawyer for Walt Nauta. You say in your papers, you're the longtime lawyer for Walt Nauta, forever, since he testified before the grand jury, since he met with Stan Woodward and complained about his meeting with Jay Bratt, right? Just to show how this circle completes. Jay Bratt signed the opposition to Walt Nauta's attempts now to delay the next hearing on the 14th. Woodward has previously complained and sent a letter to some House committee because he's MAGA himself and paid by the Save America PAC to represent Walt Nauta. He complained that Jay Bratt didn't play nice in the sandbox and raised the issue when he met him for the first time with a dossier in front of him and a background of Stan Woodward. And it says, well, it says here that you're also thinking about becoming a judge in the District of Columbia, not federal, but the territory of the municipal judge in the DC. Surprised you're a Trump guy then, suggesting to Stan Woodward that he was going to put the kibosh somehow through Joe Biden of his trying to become a judge. I can see why he wants to become a judge, by the way. His civil practice looks terrible. The way he represents clients looks terrible. He should get himself off the playing field and would go become a judge. But this is that battle between Jay Bratt, who's now been accused of doing something unethical and prosecutorial misconduct because he had the temerity to call out, hey, I never met you before. You're going for judge? And you're going to do that now while you're representing this guy? Why don't you make Walt Nauta come in and be a witness on behalf of the prosecution? See, that was the discussion. That was the meeting. The Department of Justice didn't want to indict Walt Nauta. They wanted to have him work with the Department of Justice and flip on Donald Trump. And Stan Woodward stood in the way and got his client indicted. And now he's trying to delay things further, and Jay Bratt is having nothing of it. I mean, within moments of Walt Nauta's filing, seeking the delay, the Department of Justice wrote its letter and said, no way, no how. And now we're going to wait to see what Judge Cannon is going to rule. Could be as early as tonight on the 10th. And we'll see the papers that are going to be filed by Donald Trump and I guess by Stan Woodward and Sasha Dayton. I mean, she's able to file papers. Why isn't she able to handle the hearing? That's going to be another thing the Department of Justice is going to question. So we got that filing on the 10th against the motion for continuance by the defense, Trump and Nauta, trying to push the trial off into 2025 land. Of course, the Department of Justice is going to have another reply paper to oppose that, and it's all going to be pulled together on the 14th in a hearing both to talk about trial and the SEPA procedures as Walt Nauta is dragged kicking and screaming with his local counsel and Stan Woodward into that courtroom. We'll report on it here on the MeidasTouch Network. I do hot takes just like this one about every day, if not every hour, on breaking news and analysis. I've also anchor the leading podcast at U.S. Law and Politics intersection called Legal AF. You can follow me, Michael Popok, on all things social media, including Threads at MS Popok. This is Michael Popok, Legal AF reporting.
Hey, Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.